Welcome to In the Know with the Stafford SO, a podcast presented by the Stafford County Sheriff's Office in Virginia that brings you the stories of the men and women who work tirelessly to keep our community safe each day. With In the Know with the Stafford SO, you'll find out what life is really like behind the law enforcement badge. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.
Welcome to another episode of In the Know with the Stafford SO. I am Kathy Volbrecht, your host for today. Thank you for tuning in. Today's guest is Amanda Vizinanzo, the Public Information Officer for the Stafford County Sheriff's Office. We could start off by you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do here for the Sheriff's Office.
Sure. So again, my name's Amanda Vizinanzo, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the Sheriff's Office. And essentially, the mission of the Public Information Office is to effectively engage, inform, and communicate with the community and our media partners. Our aim is to make sure that we're building a strong and trustworthy relationship with the community through engagement and good communication.
But today, you're actively engaging our citizens, making sure not only that they know, but that they can play a role in what's happening here at the Sheriff's Office.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you bring that up because social media has been a big game changer when it comes to engagement. And I think initially when social media was rolled out, a lot of law enforcement agencies, government organizations, and businesses would kind of use social media as a bulletin board for sharing information. And there was a lot of backlash from their audiences and the community who really want to be engaged. They want to see social media being used as a two-way communication channel. So our goal here at the Sheriff's Office is to make sure that we're not just putting information out there. We're actively engaging the community and making sure that channel of communication is open and that we're there for conversation and that they feel like they can open up to us and talk to us, and that we're not just that we're humans, that we're people that they can speak with and voice their concerns or share positive feedback or whatever it may be.
But why don't we start out with just giving sort of a general overview about what you do regarding your communication responsibilities to the public and the media?
Yeah, there are multiple different ways that we share information with the community and our media partners. One of those ways is our daily incident report. Mm-hmm. That's been around for about a year or so now. And basically, it's a summary of some of the major incidents or incidents that might be noteworthy to the community that have gone on in the day before. So we put those out every business day, and it'll give a recap of incidents like vehicle break-ins mm-hmm. or larcenies or whatever it may be. A lot of times our community members want to know, like, there was somebody stole a package off a porch in their neighborhood, and that might not seem like a noteworthy incident, but for the people in that neighborhood it is. They want to know what's going on. So we kind of created that daily incident report to make sure that we were communicating some of those incidents that may not be captured in our press releases. So our press releases, those cover major incidents, mm-hmm. Usually like a felony level offense. And we usually put a couple of those out every week. And we share those on our website, on our social media, and we also disseminate to our media partners through email.
Okay. Now, why don't we go ahead and get into social media, because it
Sure.
plays such an important role in how you engage with our public. Talk a little bit, and you did touch on this earlier, but talk a little bit how social media has really changed how we work with our public.
Sure. So the impact of social media on law enforcement has been both positive and negative. And I don't even necessarily want to use the word negative. I guess maybe challenging would be a better word. But there's a quote by Winston Churchill that kind of sums up the situation pretty well. And he said that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on.
Yes.
And that quote really kind of sums up the way social media has changed how we communicate information. Right. These days, everybody has a smartphone in their hand, and social media has basically enabled the very, very fast dissemination of information. And this can be a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, that allows us to get information to the community very quickly and sometimes even in real time. But it also allows misinformation and rumors to spread.
Right.
So, our primary goal is to make sure that we are sharing information with our community that's accurate and timely, and that we are viewed as the official source of information in our community. And fortunately, I think that is the case. Our community members often share our videos and posts in their local groups, and I know that the media will also share some of our videos and posts as well. And we love that, because then we know that the right information is getting out there.
Right. And I also find it interesting that with social media, because most everybody has a smartphone, that they're also making the news, the people who have these smartphones. You'll see them, we've seen this actually on TV a number of times, but where they are recording events, they're recording incidences, and again, that goes back to sometimes that could be challenging. I mean, a lot of it can be helpful, but it's also challenging for us, especially when we have investigations where we have to be careful of what information we're putting out there at that time.
Absolutely. Again, we're big proponents of transparency. We want to
Yes.
put as much information out there as quickly as possible. And it is a challenge to make sure that we're getting accurate information out quickly. But every single day we're working to make that happen.
Right.
And one of the things that we've rolled out is our Happening Now videos.
Yes.
We are trying to make sure that even if it's not a video, that we'll have a Happening Now post letting the community know about things that are going on in their neighborhood that they might see going on as they're getting their kids ready to get on the bus stop, and they're wondering, hey, is it safe to be out there, because I see all these cruisers out there. And we want the community to know that we see that. Our deputies and our command staff, they are, their mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, they have children on their own, and they share those same concerns, and they're thinking about those too. And so we're always looking for new ways to, ensure that we're getting information to the community quickly and helping them to know if they're safe or if they're not.
Right. And the beauty of those Happening Now videos, and I've seen them, you'll put them out at the beginning of an incident so people know that something is actually taking place. And then you'll come back in later and say, this has been resolved or something to that effect. So you're getting out there almost faster than the media can.
Absolutely. And the other great thing is we're putting together media-ready content.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of news outlets, they're short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
They're already having a difficult time getting a cameraman or reporter out to a scene. So we're trying to take some of the burden off them as well and put together information that they can share quickly.
Can you talk just a little bit about Facebook and what we do on there? Because I know so much of what we do is on Instagram, it's on Twitter, but Facebook still plays quite an important role in how we communicate.
It definitely does. And when I mentioned before that law enforcement has, that social media has had both a negative and positive role in law enforcement operations, one of the things I really want to highlight one of the positives I really wanted to highlight was the way we're able to share some of the behind the scenes stories involving our deputies and our community members. And we really use Facebook to share some of those stories. There's a long list of good deeds that are going on in our community and in our department. We have people who every single day are bringing us treats or lunch or cards or other things, and it's truly incredible. And there are also some bigger stories that probably would not have been shared with the community was it not for social media.
Right. I see those pictures almost every day, and they are, you had mentioned earlier, that social media helps to make our organization, our deputies, our detectives, to show the community that we're human too. And those pictures, as simple as they are, between our staff members and members of the community, go so far to do that. And I think that's just, again, a simple effort, but goes so far and does so much for us. We had touched briefly on, protecting the integrity of an investigation when you're still, researching the details about that. Can you discuss the challenges briefly about how do you provide information to the public and not divulge details that could be detrimental to the investigation?
Sure. So law enforcement is in a unique position. We strive to be as transparent as possible and to release as many details pertaining to an investigation as quickly as possible. But the reality is that sometimes we can't share all the details immediately. Sometimes there are details that could be really helpful to our investigation. It could be something like related to evidence, for example. Something as simple as not revealing that a firearm was located during an investigation. That firearm could later be linked to a suspect. And so it may not make sense immediately to the public why we didn't share that information, but I can tell you right now that, we diligently go over all the facts of the case. We pour through the reports to make sure that we're sharing as much as we can. Right. And we're very thoughtful and very diligent when it comes to what we withhold. And, usually it's only for a certain amount of time. Right. At some point we're able to share that information. Other times we're not able to share certain information because it's out of sensitivity to the victims. For instance, if we had a fatal accident, we have to make sure that next of kin have been notified before we can reveal the names of the victim. Right. Sometimes we'll even wait to confirm that the death happened, just to make sure that the family members are, hearing it from us and not on social media.
But again, once you have the information or you've made the proper notifications, you do get the word out to the community just to sort of wrap everything up and make sure that they know what's going on.
Exactly. We like to make sure that we always do updates.
Right.
So, our initial notification may just have a few details, but as the investigation unfolds, we reveal more and more. And we want the public to know we are trying to be as transparent as possible. Yes. And trying to ensure that they have all the information that they need.
Right. You've talked about this a little bit during our conversation, but can you talk a little bit more about how your communication efforts promote our community engagement? I know we do so much every single day. You had mentioned the pictures. When people come in, organizations bring us cookies, desserts, full-blown meals sometimes. Then we send our deputies out to talk to different organizations.
Yeah, so we like to make sure that we are recognizing our community members and our deputies who are performing good deeds every single day that often go unrecognized and that our community might like to know about. I think that every single day we're inundated with negative news, and I know here at the sheriff's office that we deal with, some heavy issues. And so it's always a breath of fresh air to be able to share some of these stories that really reveal the good in people. And we have a long, long list here at the sheriff's office of some of those incidents. And I can name a few now. Sure. In December, the sheriff was approached by a man in Starbucks, and that man had a handful of gift cards that he wanted to donate to our deputies. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that he realized just how big of an effect that had on our deputies. That didn't just give those deputies who were coming in for their late night shift a warm cup of coffee. It also let them know that there's a community that is behind them, supporting them. And that's an important thing when you're, sitting alone in a cruiser at night away from your family, or you're about to go into a dangerous situation. Knowing that the community stands behind you is so important. On the flip side, we also like to recognize our community members who are doing amazing things every single day. And also in December, Sheriff Decatur recognized an 8-year-old girl named Emma Meckley. And Emma is a student at Conway Elementary who helped save her dad's life when he was having a medical emergency in their car. She was able to take his foot off the gas pedal and dial 911, saving his life, just 8 years old. And then in September, there was a woman with dementia who went missing in the South Stafford area. And while our deputies were looking for her, she was located by this kind woman who stayed with her, talked to her, just offered her companionship until we arrived. And we were able to recognize her. And then just a few weeks ago, one of our deputies, Deputy Lytle, was able to bring some life-saving medication to a man who had a medical emergency at a local hotel. He was traveling from out of state. He had his medication and belongings at his hotel. He ended up being landed in the hospital, and he didn't have access to that medication. And the nurse called us not knowing what to do. And that deputy was able to retrieve the medication and the belongings and bring it to the hospital.
Right.
And it's just small little things like that that, really have an impact in people's lives. And, we see every day all these hidden heroes in our community who are doing extraordinary things. And social media is giving us the opportunity to share those things.
I would encourage our listeners who have not looked at those social media pages to please do that, because there's so many wonderful stories, like Amanda said, about these great things that our citizens are doing to help each other out and to help our deputies out. Let me ask you, though, there is so much happens with social media. It moves very quickly. How do you keep up with the latest communication trends?
Training is a huge component. Fortunately, there are a lot of conferences and training opportunities for public information officers, and those opportunities provide a lot of insight into some of the emerging trends when it comes to communication. And it also, even more importantly, provides the opportunity to share information and ideas with other law enforcement agencies and kind of get an idea of where they're at and what they're doing, and some of the ideas that they have implemented. But at the same time, it's important for me to keep a pulse on what is happening here in Stafford County. What's working for another agency or another department might not work for us here in Stafford. Communicate with your community the way they want to be communicated with.
Right.
So I'm constantly assessing which social media platforms our community members are using, or is social media even, covering all demographics. For instance, we have had numerous reports recently of these scams involving gift cards, where a scammer will call someone up posing as a member of a law enforcement agency or a power company like Dominion Power, and they will demand immediate payment in the form of gift cards. And sometimes when we share information about those scams on social media, it's targeting a younger demographic who grew up with a smartphone in their hands and tend to be a bit more technologically savvy. So they kind of comment things like, who would fall for that? And everything. But we know that there are people in our community that are falling for that, who are not aware of these scams, who didn't grow up with a smartphone in their hand or have access to that same information. And, that tends to be some of the older generation here in our community. Sure. And so social media isn't always the best way to reach them. So we have to kind of think of other ways to be reaching all our community members. And when it comes to those scams, for instance, where we reach out to our media partners, we know that some of these older generations, that they are watching TV.
Yes.
So at least if we do, a story via the media, that could reach them. Or our crime prevention office created some great posters that they put in some of our local businesses, including the Target on South Gateway Drive, that warned of these scams. So we're constantly having to assess what the limitations of social media are, and also new ways that we can leverage social media to make sure that we are reaching everyone in our community. Sure. And sharing information quickly.
I was going to ask you, what are some new communication initiatives that you're working on, if you're able to talk about some of those now?
Sure. So we're constantly hearing about the power of video, and we've certainly seen that with our Happening Now videos.
Yes.
Those have been really popular and really taken off, and I think kind of introduced a more human element to the traditional press release, which is written and kind of formal, maybe even cold, but when it's communicated in video format, you see somebody. And when that person is saying, we're offering, our prayers and our thoughts for this community member who died, or their family members, or this police officer who passed away, it has a much greater effect than if it was just written in a release.
Sure.
And so right now we're kind of assessing new ways that we could continue to use video, new ideas for how we can, continue to gauge our community using that video format.
Okay. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. That was so informative. And again, if we just direct people to our website at staffordsheriff.com, all of our social media channels are listed there. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and maybe some new things are coming down the pike that we'll make sure that we tell you about. But that wraps up this episode of In the Know with a Stafford SO. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to In the Know with the Stafford SO. This podcast is produced by members of the Sheriff's Office and is one more way we connect with our community. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Visit our website at staffordsheriff.com for details about our social media channels as well as events where you can meet our staff. Thank you for your support.